Hi everyone, it's Maddie Brady. We're here to get real about mental health. Stay tuned for some great conversations with some very special guests. Hi everyone, welcome to Get Real. We are here with Sam.
Hello.
And she is here to talk about drinking for 20 years and then deciding to finally throw in the towel and why you did that, really.
Yeah, hi. Thanks so much for having me, Maddie.
Of course.
Super excited.
So what really made you... Well, first let's start off with when you started drinking, because you have a really unique story because you grew up in Germany, so the legal drinking age was 16. So what was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Germany in a really small town. Not much else to do, really, other than drinking beer. And the legal age for drinking beer and wine at bars in Germany is 16. So obviously, like, I started drinking before that a little bit with, like, friends at parties and everything. But, like, starting at age 16, I literally would go to a pub, like, to the local Irish pub, like, almost every weekend and, like, have quite a lot of beer, like quite a lot to drink, and sometimes we'd sneak like some shots or whatever, even though that wasn't legal. But it was so like such a normal part of my life, even at like age 16, 17. It's kind of like, in hindsight, it's pretty crazy actually to think about that it was like a child, like a 16-year-old child, just like going to the pub. I used to work at a bodega on Fridays, and I would like lock up the bodega at like 7 o'clock and then go and meet my friends at the pub.
That's insane. You're just like a mini adult.
Right, like a little adult. Like it's kind of hilarious to think about it. Yeah, and that just continued, obviously, you know, in Germany. Drinking is like a big part of our lives. Like, you know, beer is considered a staple in Bavaria. You just go and drink. And I was always a pretty, like, yeah, I would call it a binge drinker. Like, I was definitely like a party drinker. Definitely always a social drinker. Like, I find it extremely boring to be drinking at home by myself. Like, I'm not the most, you know, entertaining person for myself to be around. So I'm always a party drinker. But I was definitely like one of the people that would just like, I'm the girl who's like, yeah, let's do shots. You know those people. So that was me, and that continued through college. I moved to England at some point. I was in Manchester. Manchester has an extreme party culture. You know, drinking, drugs, whatever it is. I worked at a bar. I was bartending for about a year when I was in grad school. So, you know, and then moved to New York, which also has like a very intense, like, work hard, party hard kind of culture. Worked for a tech startup where we had a kegerator in our office.
Oh my gosh.
So come 5 o'clock, like many days, we would start drinking beer in the office at like 5. Sometimes we'd have like 4 o'clock meetings and we'd start drinking. And it was so normalized, and it never really occurred to me that it's kind of actually pretty crazy that it's such a normal part of our lives to just be, you know, putting poison in our bodies. And that, like, I think paired with then going out on weekends or sometimes going out midweek and really partying up, really doing shots. You know, I started, like, my blackouts started getting really bad in my, like, early 30s. And it's at some point I just realized maybe I should reconsider this. And it's kind of crazy for me because I never and I know people talk about this a lot, like, and it's a realization that has taken me some time, that you don't have to hit rock bottom, you don't have to, you know, be really struggling with alcohol in order to reconsider your relationship with alcohol. For me, it was, I'm high functioning, you know, I went to grad school, I got a decent job working in tech and everything. Like, my life was fine. Like, it was totally fine. And I didn't realize that drinking had such a big impact on it, because on the surface I was like doing totally fine. And I just listened to another podcast, and the host actually described her drinking behavior, and I really recognized myself there, as in, like, I can go weeks without drinking. I'm totally fine. I have a job. Like, my relationships are not great, but okay. You know, I'm living my life just like everyone else, but maybe drinking is one of the things in my life that is actually making it worse or making it harder. And just thought, well, let's give it a shot. Let's see what it's like not drinking for a while. And it's been 4.5 months, and I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. Why haven't I thought about this like sooner? And that's kind of, that's like the very condensed version of the story, sort of how I just stopped. And it's absolutely mind-blowing how different my life is already, even just in those 4 months.
That's great. And I think that really hits home with a lot of people, the fact that you had a great job, you had all these things, you had a PhD in an education and got through all these different periods of your life just fine while you were partying and while you were drinking. So I think a lot of times people, including myself, I used to do the same. Had the same job for many, many years. I was late to work once, ever. Wow. I'm like, I'm doing great. I'm a high performer at work. I make sure that I'm always going above and beyond. And I just didn't think that meant I had a problem. You picture that your life has to crash and burn entirely. But I was crashing and burning on the inside. But externally, everything seemed fine. Yeah. So I think that is really an excuse people use for a reason as to not get sober and not stop drinking, because they just think, well, I'm fine. I still have a partner. I have been taking care of my kids, or my job, I've never been doing better. I just got a promotion. So they equate these things to being okay. But really, if you're not okay on the inside and okay with yourself, are you really okay at all?
Yeah. I feel like in New York City, I don't know if it's like this elsewhere, but especially in New York City, it's almost like a badge of honor. It's like almost like you can be proud of like the whole work hard, party hard. Like, I'm doing all these things and I can party, like, you know, like crazy. Like, look at me, how cool I am, right? Yeah. Like, it's almost like, and you mentioned you work in tech too, right? Like, the startup thing is almost like you show up like kind of hungover on a Friday, and it's like, damn, like, we partied so hard, but you still do all your meetings, you still do your job and everything, and it's almost considered as like, you know, kind of a cool thing to be able to juggle both. But you don't realize how much is sort of like slowly, you know, chips away on your physical health, your mental health, and your ability to just sort of, you know, live your life. I don't want to say live your life to the fullest, but like live your life, make it as good as it actually could be. And that's the crazy thing, how we actually think like, oh, this is such a cool thing. I can work hard and party hard. But then actually, and again, like, it's only been 4.5 months for me, but taking away the partying hard, I'm like, the working hard is easier. Everything else is easier. Everything else is actually nicer. Why would I want to do the partying and like the drinking and the blacking out if I can just like leave that out and have everything else be so much better? Right.
Definitely. I feel like what you said with the wearing it like a badge of honor, I used to do the same, where I used to go out, drink the whole night, black out, do crazy things, and then wake up at 5 a.m., go for a run, and then go sit on the beach all day and work back years ago. And I used to brag about it as like, that was kind of my shtick. I was like, I party all night and then start waking up at 6 a.m. and I sweat out the alcohol. Really, I was only going for like an hour run at 6 a.m. because I had an issue over exercising, and I felt like I had to do that. And then there were times, I remember one time I literally started blacking out, like where like my vision was being blurred while I was running. But that then like I would just completely disregard that and go into work and brag about it. And people would even say when they met me, aren't you the girl that like will be out till 3 and wakes up at 5 and runs? I'd be like, yeah, that's me. God. And really, it's something so bad for you. And I know a lot of time in sales culture, I know somebody that worked for a company that said if you came in hungover and if you made X amount of dials before, like, you got extra applause because you not only were there after a crazy night, but you also did your job while being hungover. Yeah. So they celebrated that and were like, this guy's a legend, you know? Yeah, like that classic, like, Wolf of Wall Street mentality. Which is hilarious because in the Wolf of Wall Street, I mean, mean, Jordan Belford, who's my dream guest, actually got sober because you crash and burn. So everybody knows that story, but then they're still trying to live the beginning of the movie thinking it's going to end in a different end result than how it actually ends.
Yeah.
So it's crazy. But what was the ultimate deciding factor? I mean, doing it for so long, what made you want to stop?
Yeah, that's a great question. There's like multiple things that happened at the same time. I had a really, really terrible relationship like a couple winters ago with someone who had like drinking issues, and that was like always the big problem. Like he turned into a completely different person as soon as he started drinking, and I didn't even know how to handle that. So that was really, it was always like a point of contention. We were always fighting about it, and in some weird way I started drinking more to almost like keep up with him, to kind of be on the same level and like not care about it as much as I did. And then for some reason, as soon as that ended, I started another relationship with someone who also had some serious like drinking and substance abuse issues. Very, very different, handled in a very different way. Kind of really funny to see like, you know, similar behaviors result in like different outputs or different behaviors. And it was, and again, I did the same thing. I was just like drinking more to kind of keep up and like be on the same level, and we're just constantly fighting, and it was extremely draining, and my mental health wasn't great. And at the same time, I was also training for the New York City Marathon. It was my first ever marathon. So again, just going back to like, that's funny, I'm also a runner. So like, you know, running and like marathon training, and sometimes being hungover during like my 18-mile long runs. I'm like, yeah, I did it. Like, look at me, I'm so cool. Like, did my 18-miler hungover in 90-degree heat. What am I doing to my body?
Yeah, it's so dangerous.
It's so bad. And that all just came together, and sort of culminated in, you know, the last like couple of months before the marathon, which was in November. So that must have been like September, October. I was talking about, I should probably stop drinking, because, you know, just to get ready, prepare for the marathon. And I kind of did that. And then one Tuesday night, I went out to Astoria to visit a friend at a bar that he was working at. And I actually initially said, like, I'm going to have 2 drinks. That's it. I'm going to have 2 drinks that night. I almost never try to moderate. Like, I don't have a hard time, like, not drinking at all. Almost never try to moderate. It's, like, on or off for me. But that night, I was like, I'm only going to have, like, 2 vodka sodas or 2 tequila sodas, no shots, nothing. As soon as I walk into the bar, sorry, Will. Will was like, yeah, you want a shot? And I'm like, no. Well, actually, yeah, let's fucking do it. Like, if your friend is a bartender, like, this is like, it's like the internationally recognized, like, sign of, like, gesture of hospitality and, like, making friends with a bartender. You just do shots together. That's how you, like, become friends. And I was like, yeah, of course. Like, so that night turned into so many shots. I woke up. It was the craziest blackout I've ever had in my life. Absolutely no recollection. I remember being at the last bar I was at with him, looking at my phone to get an Uber, and the next thing I know, it's 12 o'clock the next day, like noon. I wake up on my bed with my clothes on, and I'm like, I have no idea what happened. He texts me almost the same moment. Is like, dude, what happened? I'm like, I have no idea. I was late for a work meeting, and that blackout, especially after saying I'm only gonna have a couple of drinks on a Tuesday, right? I'm only gonna have a couple of drinks. I was like, what am I doing to my body and my brain? And I actually started getting worried, because I've never had a blackout like that. Usually you kind of, things start coming back, right? Still to this day, I do not remember what happened. And I mean, you know, I'm 37 years old. At this point, I have to take care of my health and my brain. Like, I was actually genuinely worried. And I stopped drinking until the marathon for like another, you know, a few more weeks, a month. After the marathon, started drinking again a little bit. And then I was traveling. I did my like eat, pray, love thing in Italy for a couple of weeks. And And again, like I listened to a podcast, kind of recognized myself. I was already not drinking that much anyway because I was traveling by myself. So again, like I'm not the most fun company for myself when I drink, so I didn't. And at some point I was like, wow, maybe I should stop drinking. And that day or that weekend, I had a longer bus ride through like Tuscany. It sounds like a freaking movie, right? It's so funny. But I had a long bus ride through Tuscany, and I started writing out every single memory I have of my relationship with alcohol since I was a small child. Since like my stepdad has some, issues with drinking that really impacted our relationship actually to this day. Family, everything, kind of friends. There's a lot of shame still in my life about things that I have done that I did when I was like younger, like shitty behavior where you're like, oh man, I was such an asshole. Literally one thing, I was like 15, I had an exchange student from Italy, and I left her with a friend because I wanted to go out drink, right? Like, I'm like, what an asshole. She was like a stranger, like she was foreign, in a strange town, and I was supposed to take care of her as her like host. And I just, like, went and got drunk. Like, what the hell? Like, I was such an asshole. And I wrote down every single memory. And I spent, like, hours just writing. Like, I was frantically typing on my notes app in my phone on this bus in Italy. And started actually turning that into Instagram posts on, like, my Finsta. So I have, like, these posts. And literally just, like, one post per day of a memory that I had. And when I got to like 60, I was like, what am I doing with my life? How is this thing that I have been doing, not like personally me just drinking, but everyone around me drinking, and like the impact that alcohol has had on my life since I was a small child? Why am I still doing this to myself? Do I still have this in my life? And I got really upset, and was like, I almost freaked out. I was like, how did I not realize that this is the thing that might be fucking with my life and might have been fucking with my life for such a long time? And I stopped, and I was like, oh yeah, that was it. Turns out, if you fuck with your brain chemistry for 20 years straight, right? Like, it's not good, and it's really, really crazy. And I keep telling people it feels like I've been playing my life on hard mode. When you play a video game, you play it on hard mode, and then you switch it to like, not necessarily easy mode, because like life is still not easy, but it's significantly easier, and my mind is completely blown. I feel like, I don't know, I'm like member of like this like secret society who like, found enlightenment, and like, wow, you just do this one thing, like, or you stop doing this one thing. It doesn't even require as much effort as like a meditation practice, or going running, or going to the gym, or doing all these things that are good for you. It just requires you to like not do something. Like for me, as like a sort of lazy person, yeah, that's easy. I can just like not drink. Like give me water. Like whether I order the seltzer or the beer, like I don't care to some extent, right? Wow, that's just mind blowing. That was a very, very long-winded answer to your question.
No, that every step along the way, I felt like I was playing my own journey in my mind because I couldn't relate to anything more. I mean, I look back so many times just screwing over friends and family and people I cared about so much, and it's almost like I didn't have the capacity to be there for them because I had to be attached to the alcohol and chasing that. Then oftentimes I would feel guilty about that. So then I would drink to not feel guilty about that. So I honestly could not relate more. And when you actually look not only at your own relationship, how you said, different relationships of yours with your stepfather and all of that, like it really just negatively impacts so many areas.
Nothing good ever comes out of drinking. It's kind of crazy if you think about society as a whole. I sound like I drank like the Kool-Aid, right? I sound like a crazy fanatic, like the anti-alcohol fanatic or something. But if you look at society as a whole, how does alcohol make anything better?
It doesn't. It really doesn't. And even with what you said about the partners you were choosing, I feel like I was talking about on an episode earlier, it was about breakups and all of that, and we were talking about how if you don't fix yourself, that you're always going to continue those patterns. And how you said you were dealing with one person that had a problem, then you went on to the next that had a problem. Even when I got sober, I continuously went after people with alcohol and drug problems. And looking back, I'm just thinking, how the heck did I do that? But it's like I didn't fix what was going on internally, and I couldn't get away from that, because oftentimes it is the same type of person. It's not about the fact that I didn't look at someone and say, wow, he drank a lot of whiskey tonight, I'm gonna go after them. It was more so those other problems that go along with drinking. Somehow I was being like pulled to it like a magnet. And I just feel like until you're actually willing to fix something or self-reflect like you did, that is a negative pattern that's going to keep on going.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned something to me before about microdosing. And I'm intrigued because I said we might have different opinions on this, which I love. I love having good conversations about things that I'm not that knowledgeable about it. So I think I have an opinion, but I don't really know that much about it. So I would love to know your journey with that.
Yeah, so to prefix that, this is not medical advice. I'm not a doctor. I have absolutely no business, like, making any recommendations or anything. I can just literally speak about my own personal experience. So, and again, this, I don't know how related this is to me also just drinking for, like, 20 plus years straight. One thing that happened to me that's almost, like, accidental. So, I've never been, like, big on drugs. I'm not a person that, like, says no, but I'm also not, like, I don't actively seek stuff out. And I was, you know, upstate at a party, kind of camping and everything, and someone had some mushrooms, and I was like, yeah, why not? I'm out in nature, there's a pool, you know, like, there's waterfalls, this is great. So a friend of mine, I just had, like, a tiny bit. Also, crazy story, I saw a baby deer. We saw, like, a fawn at the bottom of the tree, and I kid you not, I was not high. Like, I was not high enough to, like, hallucinate. I saw a baby deer, and I just lost my mind. I was like, he was just sleeping there. So crazy. So that day, I still remember I had just the tiniest bit of mushrooms, the tiniest bit of Molly, was sitting by a campfire, and, like, my friend was inside dancing, and she came out, and she just, like, sat down next to me, and she was, you know, having a good time. And she like, put her hand on my shoulder and was like, Sam, how are you doing? How are you doing? And I was like, I'm okay. I'm good, actually. I'm okay. Like, I'm fine. And that was the first time in my life that I didn't have this, like, background track of, what am I doing here? This sucks. I suck. The people suck. What, like, why I hate this? Are they looking at me? Like, all of the negative stuff, like, I've probably, to be honest, like, I was probably depressed, like, since childhood almost. I had, like, behavioral issues. My mom told me apparently in kindergarten, they, like, tried to send me to a psychologist, and my mom was like, no, we're not doing that, right? Extremely, like, probably super unmedicated, super undiagnosed ADHD, like, my whole life, super hyperactive, always got into fights, always got into trouble, got bullied, you know, obviously, if you're being a dick, then at some point that comes back at you. So, like, my whole life was, like, just had a lot of friction, and that just gave me this background track of, like, probably 20% of my brain always just having something negative there. And, like, questioning myself, questioning other people, questioning my relationship with other people. Like, what am I doing? Is this the right thing? I don't want to be here. I don't want to, like, it was not great. And yeah, that time at the campfire, my friend was like, are you okay? And I was like, I'm actually okay. There's, like, nothing else there. And it wasn't because I was like, yeah, I'm, like, partying and, like, euphoria and everything. There was nowhere near enough, like, mushrooms or anything involved to have that feeling. But the crazy thing it did for me was I realized, because, like, you know, I'm smart enough to understand chemicals at least, and I was like, wait, that's just brain chemistry. I just took this, like, tiny substance, and I've been on antidepressants, like, many times, on and off, tried therapy, tried all the things, like, literally for like 10-15 years straight. Nothing ever helped. It just made me tired. And it was like, wow, this tiny little thing that I did just sort of made me turn around, like rotate by like maybe 90 degrees, maybe 180 degrees, and just look at things differently and understand that everything that I perceive is just my brain, like my brain chemistry, like just sort of evoking an emotion based on what I experience. But that emotion could also be different. Mm-hmm. There's no, this sounds like very far out, but like, there's no such thing as like reality necessarily when it comes to your own emotions. And that just absolutely blew my brain. And I was like, is that what normal people feel like that are not depressed? They're just like experiencing life without thinking, I hate everything, I hate myself, I don't want to be here, I don't want to be alive. Like, wow. And it's just brain chemistry. And it really just changed my perspective. And I barely did any mushrooms or anything, like maybe a couple times, you know, it's fun, right? Like I do like the tiniest bit, and like everything is kind of like fluffy and nice, and the lights are a little nicer, and the music is a little nicer and everything. So I also kind of just do it for fun, let's be real, recreational purposes. But I talked about that experience with a friend of mine, and she said she actually did a guided session with a therapist, with a psychologist, a psychiatrist who specializes in, psychedelic treatment. And she said it cured her depression. She would not be alive if she had not done that. Wow. And, I didn't do too much research into it. I was just like, this just happened to me. But it is so crazy to me that almost like accidentally, after 35 years, basically, I just shifted my perspective again. Like I just kind of like turned around a little bit and was like, I can also look at my life from this perspective and without the background track. So honestly, I do think, like, I do not advocate for anyone to just like go and experiment. Please don't, that stuff can also cause psychosis and everything. So, but I think it's a super interesting option for people to look into, where, again, for me, it was a one-time thing. It wasn't like I get my Prozac prescription and then I'm on it for like months or years and I feel like garbage, because that's what happened in the past. So I do think for anyone with like struggling with these kinds of mental health issues, it's becoming more and more popular. There's more and more research coming out. I would totally look into it, because so far I've only heard positive things from other people and from myself. It's kind of amazing.
I actually saw there was a doctor that specialized in this, and I was looking to get him on here. So I'm definitely even amazing, more so intrigued. But so it's not something I think I could or would ever do, just because I'm not someone that just was drinking a lot. It's like, I'm an alcoholic. It's in my blood. It's in my brain. So, and that comes with also addict. So yeah. I don't think it would be safe for me, but it's definitely interesting for other people. The one thing that freaks me out, though, is I know people, and again, I'm very unfamiliar with anything psychedelic. In my whole life, I never tried anything psychedelic ever. So I know several people that have gotten bipolar diagnoses after having experiences with ketamine. And then I also know somebody that went schizophrenic and ended up, well, I don't know this person, but this is someone, and after, I think it was acid. So I hear these stories, and then I just feel like I get really freaked out about those types of things. Like, is mushrooms different? Would you say it's a different category, or?
I believe it's definitely a similar category to acid. I don't actually know, but I know people like classify ketamine as a psychedelic. I think just based on the effect, I would not consider it to be a psychedelic. I know it's used for therapy too, for like psychedelic therapy. I would say two things, like just like anything, right? Anything that you take, like it always depends on the person and like what their brain, what their body responds to, right? So anything you do could be a potential risk.
Yeah.
So again, I do not advocate anyone just like go out and buy some stuff and like have a good time and see what happens. And at the same time, like a lot of times I do think, working with a professional, they will probably also be able to, understand whether that person, based on their health background, based on their mental health, based on that person, whether that's actually suitable for them.
Yeah.
And then do it in like a controlled environment.
Yeah.
I just like I got lucky.
Yeah.
Right? I'm just like, I sit by a campfire and I'm like, oh great, this just did it. And like, I know myself and I had done that before, right? Like, and I had my experience with drugs and I know what I respond to. Funny enough, the crazy thing is, even though I was basically, on and off just like doing random stuff my whole life, I never really had like a bad trip or like a bad drug experience. Like all my blackouts, all my bad experiences, only ever came from alcohol. Like every single time. So I never did enough drugs to like have like any bad effects from that, I think. So yeah, I do think, if anything, I would do it in a controlled environment and really with a professional who also understands like the impact of that. But yeah, like having like actual mental health issues like triggered by psychedelics is a known thing.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought it was a good idea. I'm just like, YOLO,
Yeah. Well, a lot of times, like, at least the people I know, it's because they have really bad mental health issues in their family lineage and in their family tree. But a lot of times people don't know that because before now, nobody recognized mental health.
Yeah.
Like, nobody's like, oh, my grandpa was bipolar. But then, like, you look back and hear your grandma talk and say X, Y, and Z, and then you're like, okay, that sounds familiar. So nobody really knew what the heck was going on back then. So that's the only thing that freaks me out, is that it definitely won't go well with some people, but that's amazing that it helped you so much.
By accident. I stumbled into it, and it was definitely like life-changing. Yeah.
That's
crazy.
Amazing. So it just, like, when you say it just shut off the background noise, is that still to this day? Like, it just completely went away?
I almost, it's crazy. It's not like it shut it off. Like, it's not like it suppressed it. But again, like, it made me just, like, step aside and look, like, past the background noise. So, like, the background noise is still there sometimes. But, like, I now know that it's just in my head. Right? It's, like, I can literally just say, like, this is just my perspective. And I'm just, like, staring down. I have, like, tunnel vision and just, like, looking at the negative things. And I can actually pivot that a little bit and say, like, this is just my brain being an asshole to me, right? And that's it's kind of crazy. Like, I wish I had actually done that in like a controlled environment to like really understand what happened and really understand why things are so different for me now. And I was separate actually from like quitting alcohol. Like, I didn't stop drinking until about 2 years later. And I think the two things combined, like already having like a better sort of perspective on life and, being in a better place mentally and emotionally, other than for like that relationship that just dragged me into the deepest, darkest hole that I've been in a very long time. Like, quitting drinking just felt like the missing piece for me, where, I experienced happiness for the first time in my life. I experienced happiness. I was and again, like, with no substances, no nothing, just, I don't know where I was, like, maybe on the subway, going over, like, the Williamsburg Bridge or something and seeing Midtown, something like that, or just, like, walking down the street in the East Village. And I had never experienced happiness before in my life because I was depressed. Like, that's just what it's like, right? Like, you can experience joy, you can be pleased and, oh, this is great, right? but I never experienced just like, this is great. I like this. I like my life. And you know, on the outside, nothing changed. Like, I'm still work the same job, still live in the same neighborhood, right? Like, nothing changed. I still don't get up at 5 o'clock and do yoga and journal and go for my, I still suck at dragging myself out to, like, go do my marathon training, right? Like, none of that changed necessarily. I didn't, like, pivot my lifestyle 180, but everything I do with so much more, I'm just, like, more content, more peaceful, more, you know, I have more self-respect, more self-awareness. And I'm just, like, I think that was the missing piece, was, like, the self-respect. So just to go on a little bit of a tangent, but the thing that I mentioned earlier about shame, I do think the drinking and, like, my behavior that came from drinking and just the drinking itself, I don't know what it was, maybe because of, like, my family issues, my family history of drinking. There's some amount of shame attached to it, and that kind of went away, and I think that made me value myself a lot more, and it made me definitely, you know, in my relationships with other people, I started setting boundaries. You know, I don't talk to the toxic people anymore that kind of just use me and drag me into their bullshit, because I don't feel ashamed anymore, and I feel like I'm a full person. I'm a decent person. I try to be a decent person. You know, there's still flaws, obviously, but I'm kind of proud of myself, and that makes me respect myself a lot more. And it's almost like a, you know, self-perpetuating. The more you respect yourself, the more you set boundaries, the better you feel about yourself, and the better your life gets. And it's, again, 4.5 months. I mean, maybe like, I'll totally crash tomorrow and, like, everything is going to be terrible, and, you know, I'll regret going on podcasts and talking about how awesome everything is, and people will just find me, like, a crying, sobbing mess in the corner of, like, a dive bar. Who knows, right? You never know. But it's, it's just been, definitely, like, the missing piece, I think, in the big puzzle.
I mean, there definitely are days that are still hard, and you're still sad, and you still experience that throughout not drinking, but it's a heck of a lot better than when you are in it. So I think it's amazing. And so you opened your own bar. I mean, 4.5 months, you're already taking over the world with it. So tell me a little bit about the bar you started.
Yeah, so this kind of came out of, like, the whole, you know, relationship breakup stuff, and I just started going to bars a lot because I love bars. I love hanging out at dive bars. Again, like, I started going to bars when I was 16. Like, it's part of my life, kind of, to be friends with bartenders, hang out, like, work in the industry myself, all these things. I'm always friends with the regulars. I started a softball team with a bunch of regulars at my old dive bar once, which is a terrible idea because everyone was always very hungover. We were the worst softball team in the entire league. Did not win a single game. So, like, it's just part of my life, and it's not necessarily something I wanted to give up. Like, this is, like, a 10-second soapbox moment. Like, I do almost take issue with this whole, like, oh, I used to go out and party, and I used to drink all the time, but now I'm in bed by 9 o'clock on Fridays, and, like, this is great. It almost makes it feel like there's, you know, it's black or white. Either you go out and party and, like, get really drunk and, like, you know, your life is a mess, or you don't go, you stop drinking, you're kind of boring. Sorry to everyone. Like, there's a middle ground. You can still go out and do all these things. I was out until 3:30 last night, and I slept until 11:30. I did not go for my run. I just didn't drink, and I woke up feeling not hungover, right? And there's, like, definitely this middle ground. So I do think having, you know, social spaces, having events, having just, like, fun parties, whatever it is, without the alcohol is totally possible, and it's almost necessary, because otherwise it will really just be considered this, like, black or white, which will make not drinking also very unattractive to a lot of people that say, I don't want my life to end just because I stopped drinking, right?
Exactly.
So anyway, so that was kind of, I just started drinking a lot more just because I wanted to go out, not because I wanted to drink. But it just comes with it, right? Like, you go to a dive bar, you start drinking, or you have a drink. I'm not bold enough to just, like, go and order a seltzer if I'm sitting by myself at a bar. You know, other people might be might have the confidence. I don't. I just go with the flow and like order a beer or a tequila soda, whatever. And I just realized like I wanted to go somewhere on a, say, Tuesday night where I could have like the social environment of a bar and just like meet people, chat with the bartenders, whatever, like this, third place, outside of my home, outside of my work, that just doesn't revolve around drinking. And even in a city like New York City, there is no such thing. There's a couple of late night coffee shops. That's pretty much it. Where else do you go? So I just said, well, fuck it, I'm gonna do it myself. And I started doing these pop-up events last year in December, and it's been, moving slowly, but it's just been absolutely fantastic. I've met so many amazing people. People feel encouraged to like share their own stories. I also have friends of mine that are drinking, but kind of want to cut down on stuff, that come to my like events on Friday nights, and it's just this like amazing community of let's have fun, let's have a comedy show, let's have a trivia night, let's have like a sober St. Patrick's Day, just without drinking alcohol, but we still kind of do the same thing you would do at a bar on a Friday night.
I love that, because I've talked about before where I feel like in the beginning I was still going out all the time, super late, all of that. And then now I don't feel the urge to go balls to the walls, like all out, but I'm also not trying to be in bed by 9 o'clock. So I would love a place, like you said, your place is a lot more divey, and I haven't experienced that yet. I can't wait to go. But I love the idea to go after work, hang out till 11, hang out till 12, and then go home. Wake up without a hangover.
Exactly.
Sounds amazing. And to find other cool people that are also on the same wavelength as you, whether, as you said, either not drinking themselves or also do drink, taking a night off.
Exactly.
Just having a little bit more mindfulness with their actions.
Yeah, that's the whole point. We're actually doing a sober friend speed meet next week. Because a lot of times people are like, well, I stopped drinking, I stopped partying, and like, how do you even meet people? So we're doing like I do know a lot of people that met at my events, which is super cool, but we're being a little bit more intentional about like actually friend speed meeting. And I'm super excited about it's funny, someone else asked me like, are you creative, like what do you create? And I'm like, I don't play music, I don't do arts, like I'm just such a not creative person. And then I realized I create communities, I create connections.
Wow.
And
wow, that's beautiful.
And I'm like, damn, yeah, that's what I do. That's my way of like creating things, and just standing in front of a room and seeing people chat with each other and people meeting each other, and sort of knowing there is support, knowing there are other people that are sort of like, doing what, like the opposite of what society is telling them to do. Like society is telling you like, go party, go drink, right now, like beer ads, whatever, everywhere. And like to see there are people there and building up this network and this community of just let's hang out, let's be social, let's do fun stuff, and just like not drink. It's such a small component if you think about it, right? Let's just drop that, but do all the other stuff. It makes me so incredibly like proud and excited and happy, and I can't wait to see like what else I'm going to be building. I should probably know that, but like I'm also it's been 3 months. I don't have a master plan. I do want a permanent spot in the end. Like I do want to have that third place. I do want to have like bar, cafe, bottle shop kind of situation. But right now I'm just sort of connecting with a lot of communities, connecting with a running community in New York City, which I'm super excited about. I did like do post workout drinks with like a yoga class. I do this, speed meet. I'm just kind of like dipping my toes into everything to kind of see like, where can I have the biggest impact? Where can I make like the biggest sort of connections with people? And it's, again, like it's so crazy that in a city like New York, you don't necessarily have that yet. A lot of like sobriety kind of events are really focused on recovery, right? You have like AA meetings and just like organizations that are, really focused on sobriety and recovery. And I want to, and those are fantastic and absolutely necessary, right? I kind of want to just cater to like the segment of people that's like me. Like, I don't think I need to necessarily go to like a 12-step meeting. Like, you know, I stopped drinking and it wasn't a big deal for me, which is like crazy. I always feel like such a, you know, show off kind of saying that. It's like, oh yeah, it was easy for me. But like, there's a lot of other people that are like, yeah, I just stopped drinking because I don't like it, you know, whatever. And sort of, you know, that group of people that has already, you know, is like past recovery or doesn't even have to focus on it that much, but still wants to have a social space. Like, there's so many people out there. You know, we talked about it earlier. New York City is like, I don't know, 10 million people. There's probably a few million that don't drink that still want to do fun stuff on like a weekend night. And that's what I'm super excited about to just sort of like unearth and like make it easier for people to not drink while still having fun.
No, I think it's great. And I mean, we were saying earlier too that now there's more and more popping up where there's more of the high-end non-drinking events, the dive bar, which you're bringing up, a couple physical locations, there's a couple non-alcoholic liquor stores, there's more and more popping up. And I was just saying, imagine 10, 15 years from now, I hope that there's 30, 40, 50 places, because think about how many bars there are and how many different types of bars, all the way from lounges, clubs, dive bars, everything in between. So there's just unlimited space for everyone to thrive and get a piece of what's theirs, and really so we can all go around and go to each and every one's and really be able to have the experience that everyone that does drink have, but in non-alcoholic spaces. So.
I'm super excited about that. And it's, again, like, it's mind-blowing to me that that isn't a thing yet in a place like New York City where you can have everything. Literally every single thing you could possibly think of exists in New York. And yet we only have 2 like full-time non-alcoholic bars that both opened within like the last few months. It's kind of crazy. And I'm super excited to see that becoming more normal, right? And we talk a lot about like normalizing not drinking, glamorizing not drinking, and I think having those spaces, having those social spaces that make it just like a lot easier and are accessible to everyone, is going to be like absolutely mandatory and like necessary in order for that to become more of a normal thing. Well,
you're creating the community.
Trying, yeah.
Well, I can't wait to see where you go with all of it, and I can't wait to come and then see where you progress from here. So thank you for coming on and getting real with us.
It got real. Wow. Thank you so much, Maddie. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks for tuning in and getting real with us. Podcast will be posted every other Wednesday on Spotify and YouTube. Please reach out via DM if you want to chat.